You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
On a quiet red-eye flight from Chicago to Phoenix in the summer of 2011, a veteran flight attendant expected nothing more than a routine overnight shift. But just after takeoff, she noticed something off. A seat that didn't exist on the manifest appeared to be occupied. What followed over the next 3 hours would force her to question everything she knew about the rules of the sky and who or what flies with us when the cabin lights go dim. This isn't a ghost story passed around a campfire. It's a real account, told by someone who experienced it firsthand. And after hearing what she saw, heard and felt at 30,000 feet, you might never look at your boarding pass the same way again. If you love true-style horror stories that feel way too real, subscribe to Soul Studios now. We tell the stories you were never meant to hear. And the next one might already be watching you from the window seat. July 2011. A red-eye flight cruising 30,000 feet above the Midwest. Flight attendant Marissa Gray, 29 years old, moves down the dimly lit aisle of Flight 266, expecting a routine overnight trip from Chicago to Phoenix. But by the time this plane touches down in Arizona, Marissa will have experienced something so bizarre and terrifying that it forces her to question reality. It all centers on a mysterious passenger sitting in seat 14B, a seat that, according to the flight's manifest, doesn't exist. The flight departs just after midnight from O'Hare International. Outside, thunderheads loom in the distance over Lake Michigan, but the Boeing 737 ascends smoothly above the city lights. Inside the cabin, it's hushed. Most of the half-full flight is already dozing or quietly reading by individual lamp glow. Marissa walks the length of the economy cabin, performing a final head count. She notes a few empty seats, common for a midweek red-eye. Her pen ticks down the list. 12A, 12B, 14A, 14C, 15 rows total on tonight's aircraft. Seat numbers go from 10 up to 25, skipping the number 13, airlines and their superstitions. Marissa furrows her brow. 14B isn't on her seating chart at all. Perhaps a misprint? She makes a mental note to double-check later, then shrugs it off. It's not unusual for seat maps to have quirks, especially on older planes. As she secures the galley for takeoff, Marissa casts a glance down the aisle. A few overhead reading lights dot the darkness. A businessman in 10D types on a laptop, face aglow. An elderly woman in 12A is wrapped in a blanket, eyes shut. And a few rows behind them, an indistinct figure sits in the shadows of row 14, head tilted down as if asleep. Marissa pauses. She doesn't remember anyone sitting in 14 when she checked boarding. But from her angle at the front, she can just make out the crown of a head in seat 14B, partially obscured by the seat in front. Perhaps someone moved to an empty row to stretch out. It's not worth waking a sleeping passenger to verify their ticket, she decides. Cabin lights dim, a low ding of the seatbelt sign turning off. The captain's voice crackles over the PA, announcing they've reached cruising altitude. Marissa begins her routine service, quietly offering water and pillows to those still awake. When she reaches row 14, 14A by the window is empty, and 14C on the aisle is empty too. But 14B, the middle seat, appears occupied. A man sits there, eyes closed, a navy baseball cap pulled low over his face. His clothes are nondescript, perhaps a grey sweater, and he's very still, as if deeply asleep. Marissa hesitates. There is no boarding stub for 14B in her manifest. She was sure of it. Who is this man? Leaning over slightly, she whispers, "Sir, would you care for some water?" He doesn't react, not even a stir. Marissa notices his hands resting on his lap. They're unnaturally pale, almost bluish in the overhead light. A faint chill seems to radiate from the seat, prickling the hairs on her forearms. The passenger in 15C, right behind this man, is awake, scrolling on his phone. Yet he shows no sign of noticing the figure just one row ahead. Marissa gently repeats, a touch louder, "Excuse me, sir." Still no response. She wonders if maybe he's wearing headphones under that cap. It's odd, but not impossible. Some passengers do cocoon themselves. Deciding not to disturb him further, Marissa continues down the aisle, finishing her service. However, an uneasy feeling settles in her stomach. She doesn't recall seeing this man board at all. Back in the forward galley, Marissa flips through the paperwork. The passenger manifest lists 58 passengers. Row 14 shows 14A empty, 14B blank, 14C empty. No one was checked in for that entire row. Brow knitted, she waves over her fellow attendant, Dana, who's prepping coffee. "Hey, did you see someone switch seats around row 14? Marissa asks under her breath. Dana glances up, lips pressed in thought. "No, last I looked, that row was empty." "Why?" Marissa explains softly that she saw a man in 14B. Dana raises an eyebrow. "Our system doesn't even show a 14B for this aircraft, Ma. Maybe you saw someone in 15B leaning forward." Marissa peeks around the partition towards the cabin. A few scattered passengers are still awake, but row 14 is cloaked in shadow. "Maybe," she concedes, feeling a bit foolish. It's late and the dim lighting plays tricks. Dana squeezes her arm. "Get some caffeine if you need. Long night ahead." Dana returns to first class to tend to a call button, leaving Marissa alone with her uneasy thoughts. An hour passes. The 737 cruises high over Missouri now, slicing through thick clouds. Most of the cabin is dark. Nearly everyone is asleep. Marissa quietly collects discarded cups and snack wrappers, careful not to wake anyone. The engines hum a low lullaby. Approaching row 14 again, Marissa notices something odd. The call light for 14B is illuminated, a soft amber glow in the darkness. It's the only call light on. She freezes in the aisle, heart skipping. That seat was supposed to be empty, or rather, non-existent. Did she imagine the man earlier? Maybe not, if the call button's been pressed. Steeling herself, Marissa steps closer. In the faint light, 14B is clearly empty now. No sign of the man in the cap. The seatbelt hangs loose, unbuckled. There's no personal item, no cup or trash in the seat pocket, nothing to indicate anyone's been there. Confused, Marissa reaches up and turns off the call light. Her mind races. Maybe a passenger in the row behind accidentally hit the button? She leans over into row 15. The elderly woman in 15A snores softly, head lolled against the window. 15B and 15C are occupied by a middle-aged couple, both fast asleep under blankets. None of them are awake, let alone reaching for a call button. A drip of cold sweat slides down Marissa's back. She forces a calming breath. There must be a logical explanation, a wiring glitch perhaps. Older planes get quirks, call lights malfunction. Yes, that has to be it. She resolves to write it up for maintenance after landing. Marissa continues her slow walk, but as she passes row 14, a sudden hiss of static erupts from the overhead speakers. Several passengers stir at the noise. Marissa flinches, eyes snapping up. The static cuts out, and for a moment there is only the drone of the engines again. She exhales. Probably the cockpit crew adjusting radio frequencies, she rationalizes. Then, just as she resumes walking, the cabin lights flicker harshly, going fully out for a split second before stabilizing. Startled whispers rise from a few rows. Marissa's heart lurches into her throat. In that single strobing flash of light and shadow, she thought she saw someone standing in the aisle by row 14. But now, in the steady dim glow of the emergency lights, there's no one there. Only a few confused passengers peering around. The captain's voice comes on a moment later, calm, apologetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. Bit of unexpected turbulence and an electrical hiccup. Everything's okay, folks." Marissa forces a professional smile and walks the aisle, reassuring those awake that all is well. Yet she can't shake the image from that flicker. A tall figure, standing in the aisle right next to seat 14B, facing her before vanishing when the lights returned. Was it the man in the baseball cap? She isn't sure. She only caught a pale blur in the dark. Dana catches Marissa's eye from the front galley with a silent question. You all right? Marissa nods quickly, not trusting her voice, and gives a thumbs up. But inside, her nerves are starting to fray. 1:47 a.m. The flight is halfway to Phoenix. Outside the windows, ink-black night occasionally illuminated by distant lightning. Inside, calm has mostly returned. A few passengers are awake after the light glitch, but most have drifted off again. The air feels unusually cold for a packed cabin. Marissa rubs the goosebumps on her arms. She's never felt the cabin this chilly after takeoff. Maybe the sudden altitude change? She considers grabbing her sweater from her crew bag. As she ponders, a soft whisper tickles at her ear. Ma'am, excuse me. It's so quiet she thinks she imagined it. Marissa turns, expecting to see a passenger behind her. The aisle is empty. Row 14 is just to her left. The whisper sounded like it came from there. She peers at 14B. In the near dark, the seat seems occupied again. Yes, there is definitely a shape there. Her breath catches. It looks like the man with the cap is back, sitting unnaturally upright. His face is obscured by shadow and the brim of that navy cap, but she can feel him, watching her. The surrounding seats are empty and still. Marissa's pulse pounds in her ears. She musters the courage to step closer. Sir, she whispers shakily, did you call me? The man lifts his head ever so slowly. What little she can see of his face is unnaturally pale, almost grey. He turns toward her. The brim of the cap hides his eyes, but she senses something is very, very wrong. A whiff of air hits her, freezing cold, carrying a faint odor of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. Marissa's stomach churns. Are you all right? She forces out. The figure's lips part. In a hushed, papery voice he whispers, so cold. Marissa instinctively reaches out a hand, concerned this passenger might be in medical distress. I can get you a blanket, sir, she says hurriedly, her voice barely above her breath. Her fingers are inches from his shoulder when the overhead reading light at 14B flickers on by itself, flooding the seat with soft light. The seat is empty. Marissa gasps and staggers back, bumping into the seats behind her. The reading light shines on an undisturbed, neatly folded seatbelt. No man, no trace anyone was just there. Her mind reels. He was right there. She saw him, smelled that weird scent, heard him speak. She can still feel the icy chill lingering in the aisle. A passenger in row 15 stirs at Marissa's sudden movement. Embarrassed and trembling, Marissa quickly switches off the reading light and retreats to the galley. She presses her back against the cold metal counter, trying to slow her breathing. What is happening? Is she hallucinating? Exhaustion? She's flown dozens of red eyes, and yes, fatigue can play tricks, but this feels different. Real. Wrong. She remembers a story an older flight attendant told her once. A hushed legend among crew about a ghost passenger seen on overnight flights, an apparition of someone who died in the air. At the time, she laughed it off as a silly tale told after one too many drinks at the hotel bar. Now, sweat cooling on her neck, Marissa isn't laughing. She's terrified. Dana finds her in the galley, pale and shaking. Marissa, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Dana's half-joking smile fades when Marissa doesn't respond. With a trembling hand, Marissa grabs Dana's arm and whispers, I think there's someone on this flight who isn't on the manifest. A man. I saw him. I talked to him. Dana. He was sitting in 14B. Dana glances toward row 14, her expression growing concerned. Sweetie, 14B, she says softly. There is no 14B. She pulls out the crew manifest again, pointing. Indeed, the seat isn't listed at all. The numbering on this plane goes 14A, 40C. It hits Marissa like a bucket of ice water. The plane's layout skips the letter B for row 14 entirely, perhaps due to some old seating configuration. Seat 14B literally doesn't exist in this aircraft. Marissa's mouth goes dry. She knows what she saw. I'm not crazy, she insists in a harsh whisper. I saw him. He spoke to me. Dana looks at her friend's bloodless face and nods slowly. Okay, she says carefully, let's check the row together. Summoning her courage, Marissa leads Dana down the aisle with a flashlight pen. They stop at row 14. 14A and 14C are empty, as expected. The middle space where 14B would be is just a gap between those seats. Nothing is there but empty air above the cushion. Dana reaches down and pats the unused seat cushion that spans the row. See, just a spare seat pad. No one could sit here, Ma. She tries to smile reassuringly. Marissa feels her cheeks burn. The man with the cap had been sitting right there, impossibly perched where only an unused cushion lies. How could that be? She presses a hand to her forehead. Maybe she is overtired or ill. Dana guides her back to the galley, suggesting she drink some water and rest in the jump seat for a bit. "I'll keep an eye on things," Dana says kindly. "It's a quiet flight. You relax." 2:30 a.m. Only 1 hour left until descent. Marissa sits strapped into the fold-down jump seat in the rear galley, just out of passenger view. A half-finished bottle of water trembles in her hand. She keeps replaying the night in her mind. The man, the call light, the whisper, so cold. She cannot deny what she experienced. If it was a hallucination, it was alarmingly vivid. The plane shudders through a patch of turbulence. Marissa's eyes flick to the ceiling. Fluorescent tubes vibrate with a soft buzz. The cabin is eerily silent otherwise, most passengers still asleep despite the bumps. Dana is up front, speaking quietly to a wakeful traveller. Suddenly, the intercom crackles to life again with soft static. Marissa leans forward, expecting the captain or Dana to say something. Instead, through the crackle, she hears what sounds like ragged breathing. A chill skitters up her spine. The breathing is uneven, laboured. Then a faint voice comes through, warped and distant, as if carried on a long radio wave.
"So cold."
Marissa's blood turns to ice. It's the same words, the same hollow voice of that man. The intercom falls silent with a pop. She jumps up, forgetting the buckle, and staggers as it snaps her back. Fumbling, Marissa unclips and dashes up the aisle. A few passengers glance up in confusion from the sudden movement. She ignores them. Right now, she only cares about row 14. She reaches the row and is hit by an Arctic chill emanating from the empty space of 14B. It's as if an invisible door to the winter sky has opened right there in the middle of the plane. Marissa's teeth chatter, breath misting in the air. The overhead light at 14B suddenly flickers on again, glowing an icy blue. And in that seat, he's there. The man in the baseball cap sits rigidly, face now fully visible under the light. Marissa's breath catches in her throat. His eyes are wide open and fixed on her, glassy, milky white and unseeing. His skin is ashen, lips parted as if in mid-gasp. Frost clings to his eyelashes. For a split second, Marissa thinks he looks dead, long dead. Passengers nearby stir as the frigid air spreads. One begins to cry out in alarm at the cold. But Marissa can't move or speak. Her mind is screaming to get away, yet she's locked in place by the sight of the phantom passenger. The man's jaw moves, cracking soundlessly, and he lets out a long, raspy exhale. Though his blind eyes never leave Marissa, it's unclear if he truly sees her. He seems to be in some agonized trance. She manages a step back and bumps into Dana, who has rushed down the aisle after seeing Marissa run. Dana gasps at the cold blast. Her eyes follow Marissa's trembling finger pointing to 14B, but Dana clearly sees nothing there. "He's right there," Marissa whispers desperately, tears welling. "Don't you see him?" Dana sees only an empty seat and terrified Marissa. Around them, a couple passengers are now fully awake, shivering and confused by the sudden chill. One man rubs his arms and mutters about the air conditioning. The captain chimes over the speakers that they've begun their initial descent, unaware of the chaos brewing in the cabin. Marissa feels a pressure in her ears as the plane starts descending. Or is it the blood pounding? Everything seems to happen at once. A baby in row 16 wails from the cold. A confused murmur rises among waking passengers. Dana is pulling Marissa by the arm, hissing that she needs to help reassure people. But Marissa's gaze is glued to seat 14B, where the figure still sits amid the surreal tableau. The lights overhead flicker again, plunging the cabin into brief darkness. In that darkness comes a sound that freezes everyone's blood. A horrid, wet groan that reverberates through the fuselage. It's unclear where it came from. Some think it's the engines protesting the turbulence. Others swear later it sounded human. Marissa knows it's him. The lights surge back, brighter now as the plane prepares for landing. In the sudden brightness, Marissa blinks at row 14. The seat is empty once more. The unnatural cold abruptly recedes, leaving only the normal air-conditioned chill of an airplane cabin. The passengers exchange nervous glances, but as the lights steady and that unearthly groan fades, a collective sigh of relief comes. Maybe it was just a strange turbulence effect. The baby stops crying. People settle down, eager to be on the ground soon. Marissa realizes she is clutching Dana's hand in a vice-like grip. Dana looks at her with open concern and something like fear. Marissa can only manage a weak whisper. "You really didn't see him?" Dana slowly shakes her head. "No, but I felt something, Ma. That cold and that sound, I don't know what that was." The two women stand in the aisle as the plane makes its final approach. Protocol dictates they take their jump seats, but Marissa hesitates, eyeing row 14 one last time. The plane jolts slightly as the landing gear deploys, and Dana gently tugs Marissa back towards the rear attendant seats. The wheels kiss the tarmac at 3:04 a.m. local time. A smooth landing. The cabin erupts in relieved chatter. For most, the strange events moments before are already being laughed off as a quirky story to tell later. Marissa feels numb. She mechanically thanks passengers as they groggily deplane into the Phoenix dawn. A few give her odd looks. She must appear as rattled as she feels. Dana stays close, offering silent support with her presence. As the last passenger exits, Marissa's eyes dart constantly to 14B, which remains stubbornly empty and ordinary-looking. The plane grows quiet. The engines power down with a winding whine. Standard procedure. One final walk-through to check for left belongings. Marissa volunteers, needing to confront that seat alone. She starts from the front, walking down the vacant rows in the early light of dawn peeking through windows. The silence in the empty plane is profound, pressing on her ears. Each footstep on the carpet feels muffled. Row 10, row 11, her heart thuds harder with each number. The cabin is bright now with fluorescence and the illusion of safety, but her palms sweat. Row 12, row 14. She stops. There is something on the 14B cushion. Marissa's breath catches. Lying on the center seat's unused cushion, right where an invisible lap would have been, is a folded navy blue baseball cap. The same cap she saw on the phantom passenger. She is sure of it. Her hand trembles as she reaches for it. The cap is ice cold to the touch and damp, as if soaked in frigid water. She quickly drops it, heart hammering. How did this get here? No one sat here, no one alive anyway. Summoning courage, Marissa unfolds the cap slightly. Inside the brim, in yellowed letters, is stitched a name, Phoenix Commuter Airlines. It's an old logo, a regional airline that merged into her company years ago. Beneath the cap, something else, a crumpled boarding pass, half disintegrated as if aged in a wallet for decades. Marissa gently picks it up and squints at the faded ink. It's dated June 2nd, 1985. The destination, Phoenix, seat 14B. A sudden rush of air whirls through the cabin, snatching the flimsy boarding pass from her fingers. It flutters down the aisle. Marissa yelps and steps back in alarm. The cabin door to the jet bridge is closed. Where did that gust come from? The air grows cold again, and from the direction of row 14 comes a soft sound that stops Marissa's heart. The slow click of a seatbelt buckle fastening, by itself. Marissa feels a presence behind her, the undeniable sense of someone standing right there in the aisle. The hairs on her neck rise. Her instinct screams not to turn around. Breath shallow, she takes one step forward, then another, walking fast toward the front galley. Behind her, footsteps echo, heavy. By the time Marissa reaches the cockpit door, she's nearly sprinting. The footsteps are right at her heels. She whirls around, pressing her back to the cockpit bulkhead. Nothing. The aisle stretches empty before her, perfectly still. No cap, no boarding pass, no phantom, just row after row of vacant seats, and perhaps an extra shadow pulled around 14B that seems a touch darker than elsewhere. Dana pokes her head in from the open forward door, frowning. Marissa? All okay? She finds Marissa trembling and gasping for breath, eyes wide and brimming with tears. Marissa opens her mouth to speak, but what can she say? How can she even begin to explain? She forces a nod and croaks. All clear. No belongings left behind. They exit the plane together, the early morning light washing over the quiet Phoenix tarmac. As Marissa steps over the threshold onto the jet bridge, she glances back one final time into the aircraft's doorway. In the dim recesses of row 14, she almost sees a figure seated by the window, or is it a trick of shadows? For a heartbeat, she locks eyes with a pale face under a navy cap. It's watching her leave. She blinks, and the figure is gone. Only an empty plane remains, still and silent. Marissa swallows hard and quickly walks up the jet bridge, not looking back again. Marissa Gray never worked another flight after that night. Officially, she cited personal reasons for her resignation. Unofficially, she confided to close friends that something evil boarded Flight 266 on that summer night in 2011. A passenger that wasn't on the manifest, a restless soul still chasing a final destination. To this day, the ghostly passenger of seat 14B remains a disturbing aviation legend. Some dismiss it as hallucination or coincidence. Others, including a few who were on that flight, admit that something strange happened in the skies that night. As for Marissa, she still refuses to talk about the details. But every so often, when she can't sleep, she finds herself listening for the distant roar of a jet engine overhead. And in those sleepless moments, she can't help but wonder if somewhere on some midnight flight, seat 14B is occupied once again. Waiting for the next frightened flight attendant to notice. Some stories stay with you long after the seatbelt sign turns off. What happened on Flight 266 that summer night was never officially reported, never explained, but it left behind questions no pilot or passenger can answer. Because when a flight ends, you expect everyone to disembark, but what if someone never belonged on board in the first place? Seat 14B wasn't on the manifest, but something was sitting there.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.